Hello everybody, Ken here with some Magic Duels. We're going to dive in, see what this game's all about. Now before we get started, a little bit of my history on Magic. I played for 2 or 3 years in university. I started just around the end of Alara, start of the Zendikar block. And I played through, I guess it would have been Mirrodin versus Phyrexia. And then a little bit of Innistrad, but not too much of that. I saw bits and bobs of it. I did see a load of old cards because we played fairly casually in groups, often played multiplayer games. Had some really friendly guys who had a ton of cards who'd been playing for years, so I actually saw as many old cards as I did new ones. You know, we just kind of pulled all kinds of things, played a ton of Commander, or EDH it was at the time, and then became Commander while I was playing. A lot of multiplayer, just taking it in turns. So I'm fairly familiar with the mechanics of Magic. Obviously play more Hearthstone now because I don't have a lot of people around me who play Magic. I think Magic's a really good game. It's a really fun game. If you've played Hearthstone, you should try Magic because it's kind of the progenitor of, and really probably still the most interesting of the card games. The problem with Magic is there's a lot of mechanics in it that don't translate especially well to a computer form, because in Hearthstone all of your actions are done with no response. So you attack a creature. When it's your turn, you attack with your creatures however you want. The opponent doesn't do anything. Like, the only thing the opponent can do is have a secret triggered. That's as interactive as they get on your turn. Whereas in Magic, either player can do anything, or can do a lot of things at any time, and it means it doesn't. The game has to pause a lot and give you options to do things. So we'll get into it here.
Is power. It has the capacity to create and destroy, manipulate and transform.
Ooh, look at this! Look at that big guy.
The laws that govern each world. The infinite planes of the multiverse are home to countless mages. Yet for all their mastery over their craft, they are each bound to their own planes of reality, blind to the true vastness of the multiverse.
Oh boy.
Born with a potential for more. The spark, this gift, realized only upon facing a great ordeal. Once ignited, it allows the mage to
ignited, see?
planes,
travel between planes like a planes walker. That's Chandra. Nice.
Their journey as a planeswalker.
There we go. Planeswalker. Oh, I like that. That's good music. Lovely sound design there. So this set's actually really interesting, because my understanding is what they're currently doing in Magic is this Origins set, and it's kind of tied in this game to that, which is they're sort of rebooting the lore. And one of the things that's really nice about Magic is it's got a very deep lore. Like, if you want to go into it in terms of flavor text on cards, the books they put out with each of the sets, there's a fairly consistent lore and story to the world of Magic the Gathering. And you know, you could say the same of Hearthstone. Hearthstone is kind of Warcraft's lore, so it's following that. And what they're doing with Origins is they're rebooting it to an extent. They're retelling the tales of the kind of 5 of the core Planeswalkers, one of each of the colours. So anyway, let's get into it. We can talk about these as we go. Let's learn the basics of Magic to prepare for the adventures ahead and unlock story mode, where we can unlock the origins of powerful planeswalkers. Okay, so we'll start off with a few skill quests. Some of these might be fairly simple, but you know, hey, I'm sure some of you might not be familiar with the mechanics of Magic, so hopefully they can kind of give us some examples, and where needs I can expand on that. Okay, so we're up against this training drone. Lovely.
Welcome to Magic Duels. You are a planeswalker.
Good.
A powerful mage dueling across the myriad worlds of the multiverse.
Great, I'm excited.
Your
Okay,
story
cool.
starts with these skill
We're in the
quests.
middle of battle.
Challenges designed to hone your skills and prepare you for combat.
Fantastic.
Each player starts with a shuffled deck of cards called a library.
Library.
Your
Yep.
library contains the creatures and other spells you'll need to defeat your foe.
It's interesting. So here we play the role of kind of a planeswalker, I guess, although it's a bit confusing because there are cards called planeswalkers, but we are essentially a planeswalker, this character, and this is our library of spells which we cast, and spells can be either spells in the kind of the sense you would think of them of lightning bolts and dark magic, or you know, in creature enhancing abilities, or spells can be summoning a creature. That counts, that is considered a spell.
Each turn, you draw a card from your library into your hand. Only you can see the cards in your hand.
Nice to know.
You win the game by reducing your opponent's life total from 20 to 0.
Okay, good. That's maybe a simplified way of looking at things, but it's, yes,
Zoom in
that
on
is the
any
key.
card by moving the cursor over it and scrolling the mouse wheel up. Try it now. While zoomed in on a card, you can learn more about its ability. Good job! You can zoom in on cards anywhere to learn more about them.
Good. I don't feel like it didn't zoom in on the card. But not to worry. The important thing is,
In this skill
we
quest,
can zoom in on
you'll
cards.
learn how to attack with your creatures to reduce your opponent's life total. A creature deals damage equal to its power, the first number in the lower right corner. When a creature attacks, it becomes tapped or turns sideways. This shows it's been used for the turn. Your tapped cards will untap at the start of your turn.
Okay, so this is an important distinction. I'm going to relate this to Hearthstone a lot because it's something I think a lot of people are familiar with. Certainly, if you've watched any of my videos, you'll be familiar with Hearthstone. Creatures, when they do stuff, often have to tap, you know, to show that they've had an action, they've taken an action for the turn, and this is an issue here because creatures can do things on the opponent's turn oftentimes. You know, so I mean, I'm sure we'll get to it.
To complete this skill quest,
get ahead of
finish
ourselves.
off your opponent this turn.
Great. Well, okay.
For each creature you want to attack with, click and drag it to your opponent.
Fantastic.
You can attack with all your creatures
Good.
by clicking Attack with All. After you've chosen which creatures to attack with, click Confirm Attack.
Okay, so bit of maths. Opponent's got 4 health, which is quite impressive because it looks like it's about turn 3. But I guess maybe it's not turn 3 because we played two big creatures out here. Well, two mana creatures already. So maybe it's turn 4, let's say. Anyway, whatever happened, we're in a good position. We've got 2 attack here, and 2 attack here. He doesn't have a block. Okay, we're going to use the attack with all button down here somewhere. Yep, down here. That's good. Good to know. And then we confirm our attack. We get this little timer. So this timer is something you're going to see a lot of. This is the thing I was talking about where magic requires these pauses so that each player can interact.
Excellent. Attacking with your creature.
Because every time something happens, there are spells called instants which can be used at any time. So you could do something in response to your opponent.
Your untapped creatures can block your opponent's attacking creatures. A blocked creature won't deal damage to you. Instead, it will deal damage to the creature that blocked it, and your creature will deal damage to the attacking creature. A creature is destroyed if it's dealt damage in a single turn equal to its toughness, the second number in the lower right corner.
Okay, so we have our damage here, our strength, and we have our health or our toughness. So strength and toughness.
To complete this skill quest, survive
great.
your opponent's turn.
Survive our opponent's turn. So our opponent's going to attack, presumably here. Boosh, there we go. So we have 6 health,
To block
okay?
an incoming attack, click and drag one of your creatures to the attacking creature you
so
want to block.
We have this 2-1
Once you've
here.
selected all the creatures
can only
you want to
block
block
one
with,
creature.
click Confirm Block.
So it can only block one creature. Now, in Hearthstone, for example, the attacker does everything. So the attacker says, I want to attack this into this, and I want to attack this into face. So in Magic, the attacker says, I want to attack with these creatures, and the defender has the choice of how their creatures interact, which makes things a little bit more defensive, a little bit more weighted in favour of the defender, because we can use this little fella here. He's only a little fella, but we can essentially get him to fight this big craw worm, and he won't be able to attack face, and so this Elvish warrior will hit us in the face. But that's fine, we can deal with that. We can take 2 damage. Crack. And then this guy just crushes our little goblin fella. Thanks, little goblin fella. You'll be remembered as a noble hero.
Great job!
Great
By
job.
blocking the more dangerous creature, you survived the assault.
I'm no fool.
Now it's your
okay,
turn.
So here's
First,
our land
play
card.
the land card you just drew.
Boom. Okay, so
Now attack and win the game.
one thing to note, so land cards are your source of mana. So each of these will give us 1 red mana per turn. Each of those will give them 1 green mana per turn. But so there's 5 different colours of mana, which is one of the most interesting things about Magic. There's the 5 colours: white, red, green, blue, and black. And they each have their own flavour, and it means you can mix things together. So you can have a red and green deck, and you play some mountains and some forests. And the risk there is that you don't draw the right cards to have the sufficient mana to play the creatures you want. And it's one of those interesting things about Magic. It makes it really interesting, but it does make it harder to get into. With Hearthstone, you have that guaranteed curve. You're going 1, 2, 3, all the way up to 10. Nice easy curve. You always have the mana. The mana doesn't change between creatures. You just pay the cost and you get the creature. Here, so this fella here is a I want to zoom in on him. There we go. So this guy, for example, would cost 3 mana of any type plus 2 red mana. So it's 5 mana, of which 2 has to be red. The other 3 can be any colour. And you can only play 1 land a turn, so the curve is the same as Hearthstone, but if you don't draw a mana, you can't play it. If you don't draw a land, you can't play it. So, well worth noting. I'm sure they'll explain all of this, and we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves, but I like to chat
Remember,
through these things.
only untapped creatures.
Okay, so now they're going to explain to us probably about casting cost. There are, of course, ways to play more than 1 land card
spell,
a turn.
you need mana, the magical energy produced by your lands.
The magical energy.
Each of your lands produces 1 mana when it taps
here we
or
go.
turns
So this
sideways.
guy costs 2 green mana.
Tapping shows a card's been used. To cast Lightning Elemental, you need 1 red mana. Your mountain produces that.
Good.
You also need 3 other mana of any kind. Any lands can be tapped to produce this 3 mana.
Great
Creatures
news.
can't attack on the turn they're summoned. This is called summoning sickness, and it's indicated by a swirling effect. A creature with summoning sickness can still block incoming attacks.
Okay.
A few creatures have an ability called haste. Creatures with haste aren't affected by summoning sickness.
So again, same as Hearthstone here. This is haste is basically your charge mechanic in Hearthstone. You can attack the first turn. Also worth noting, some creatures have an ability that they have to tap to use. They have to turn sideways to use, and you can do that
In this skill quest, we'll
if
start
you
on
have
your
haste
opponent's
on
turn.
your first turn.
To complete it, win the game.
Okay, will do. Well, this isn't looking good. They're going to attack with both of these. And we're going to get hit in the face.
Your Elvish warrior can't block this turn because it's tapped.
Great. So we can't block because we've attacked with this creature, and it's tapped. It's used its action. So if we hadn't attacked with it, it could block. But unfortunately we did attack, so...
You can summon creatures to the battlefield from your hand by casting creatures.
Okay, so we need to get 2 damage through. Now these 2 attacked us, so they can't block. This guy here, this elvish warrior, it can block. Now we have a 2-3. This 2-3 would be okay, but it can't attack this turn. So if we attacked with this guy would block and we'd lose. But this one here has haste. So we play him. Lightning Elemental. Nice exciting fella. And he can attack. Now we attack. Hit this attack with all button. And this guy can only block one of the creatures. So he'll block either one. And the other one will get through and will deal fatal damage to this bot's face. Fantastic. Good stuff.
Well done. All your tapped cards, including lands and creatures, will
Okay, great.
For
Well, we
completing
completed the
this skill quest, you've...
Okay, great. So we earned some coins. So yes, this is a free-to-play game. You get coins. I imagine you can buy more coins as you go. But yes, we're going to go down the path of Gideon Ura. Now I might have a little fiddle here with our help and options. That's what I'd quite like to do. Firstly, turn the music down just a touch. Maybe the sound just a little touch more. But I would also quite like to turn off some of these things. Okay, so we've got this simplified targeting. I actually want to turn this off. What this does is it means you can't do fancy things like damaging your own creatures, but sometimes you want to damage your own creatures. You know, think about enrage mechanics with... or Gurubashi Berserker in Hearthstone, you know, sometimes you want to ping your own creature because it benefits from being hurt. And I want to turn off combat animation, that was the other thing. And maybe order blockers automatically, that's one I'm not a big fan of. Okay, basically that's a more advanced thing, but we'll probably get to that later. Anyway, let's return to the menu and let's check out Gideon's story, I guess. Boom. Gideon Ura. Here we go, here's our origin. Young Gideon, or Kithian Ura. Let's find out what's going on. Kithian Ura. You lead a small group of street toughs known as Kithian's Irregulars. Just some youths. Together you act as a force for justice and charity in the slums. Kind of I guess a Robin Hood of the magic world, you know, raiding from the rich and giving to the poor people. While raiding a Crowan estate for food, you draw the attention of city guards. Uh-oh. You're gonna have to fight these city guards. So, you know, a bit of a scoundrel, a bit of a little rascal here. Let's apply what we've learned in our skill quest. We've got to fight these Acroan guards. I imagine it will just give us a nice little white deck. So Gideon is our white planeswalker. White is a colour of kind of order and justice. Giving us a nice curve. This is a good starting hand. So you see, one of these considerations you have to make is that you have to play your mana cards. They're not just included. It does mean you have a slightly bigger hand. Now, the starting hand is 7 in Magic. You can mulligan it, but each time you mulligan, you lose a card. So if you mulligan at the start, you have to mulligan your whole hand. You can't just replace one card. You mulligan the whole thing, you draw 6 cards and then if you want to, you can mulligan that again, but this time you only get 5 cards and so on. So we've got a nice, we got our turn 1 and 2 plays. We've got some lands to play for mana. Now the maximum hand size is 7, but it's not checked until the end of turn. So you could draw 10 cards. You can have 10 cards in your hand, and that's great. But you wouldn't be able to. You could, as long as you played them and only had 7 cards left at the end of your turn, you'd be fine. If you have more than 7, then you have to discard them, and you can choose what you discard. It's a little more generous than Hearthstone, where if you hit the hand limit, you automatically burn any card that would go into your hand, which is a little bit harsher. So we play a plains. We got this 2-2 and we got this 3-1. Now this guy's got nothing here, so let's be a little bit greedy. Let's put a 3-1 down. So the consideration here is this guy only has 2 toughness. So if our opponent plays a 2-1, well, it would just trade into our 2-2. Boom. That's attack. Confirm. Gonna hit them for 2. Take that, guards. Think you can stop me? I'm a young rascal. Look at me. Look at my hair. Look at my big hair. Lovely. Yeah, so here's a 2-2 coming in. So we can trade our 1 mana 2-1 into that if we like. Now, it's not very easy to do because, as I said, oh, I see, we have to confirm on the opponent's turn to make sure we don't want to respond. See, this is the thing I was talking about with Magic. Okay. Now this is interesting because we can't make him. We can't attack this 2-2 with our 2-1. All we can do is attack and hope that he blocks it. But what we can kind of do here is just flood the board a bit. But we're in a good position. There's not any real positioning in Magic the way there is in Hearthstone. There's no limit to how many cards you can have on the table. You can just keep putting things down. One other thing to note is there's no fatigue. If you run out of cards, you lose the game. If you try and draw from an empty deck, the game's over. Which is quite harsh in a way, right? He's probably going to block our 3-1 and kill it. But we'll push the damage through and these will trade with each other. There we go. I turned off the combat animation, so I think it should be fairly self-explanatory. I don't want to waste the time with the animation. They look okay, but this game is slow enough as it is. Okay, this is a 2-2. Feel pretty good about that. We can trade our 2-1s into it. Great. Worth noting as well, creatures don't keep damage between turns. So this guy has 3 toughness, and if he blocked a 2 attack creature, he'd be down to 0-1, and in Hearthstone he'd stay as a 0-1. But at the end of turn in Magic, he goes back to being 0-3. He fully heals. So that's a risk. So I guess we've got a flying creature. So we just jump. Oh, it's pulled us out of the game. Put us into a skill quest on flying.
Some creatures have flying, which lets them soar above the battlefield.
Okay, great.
Flying creatures can be blocked only by other flying creatures, or by creatures with reach. On defense, a creature with flying can block any attacking creature, either one with flying or one without.
Okay, so this guy's attacking with his flying little bird, and this elvish warrior standing on the ground can't do anything about it. Now, if you've got flying, you can obviously block them, but there's also this thing, reach. There's often spiders have reach, and it means that they can block a flying creature, but they're not flying. So if they attack, they can be blocked by like a normal ground chump like this fella. Okay, so
creature cards have icons on the left side that indicate special abilities like flying.
Now, there's a lot of abilities in Magic, so this will take a while to get used to, but we got this little bat wing is our flying. This bow and arrow for reach, because you imagine an archer could hit a flying creature. Okay, so we need to block all 3 of these guys. Now, you can block the ground one because you're just on the ground. You can block this Welkin because you're flying, and you've got reach, so you can block as well. Fantastic. Now, worth noting, okay, so this will do 2 damage to this and not kill it. This will do 2 damage and this will die. So this dies, this goes down to 2-1, but then it will heal back up to 2-3. These 2 will trade with each other because they both 2 attack, 1 toughness, or 2 strength, 1 toughness. This one will do 2 damage to this. This won't die, but the 1 will kill this. So we'll actually not lose this creature or this creature, but all of his will die. Which is a pretty good turnout for us, really. Boosh. Interesting it's doing this. Despite we turned off the combat animation, but maybe that doesn't count. Maybe because it's a demo. We got a nice land. Let's play our land. BM a bit. Attack with all. There we go. There's our our 3 damage. They didn't actually have anything else to play, so interestingly, you know, sometimes it's a good idea to leave your mana up at the end of your turn, because you can do things in your opponent's turn. We'll see more of that, but it's very interesting. Magic's very, very interesting, mind gamey kind of thing, because your opponent's got 4 cards in hand and they haven't used 3 of their mana, so what might they be holding that they could turn on you at a moment's notice? Okay, so we've got 2 things on this. We've got flying and we've got vigilance. I want to bring him up, there we go. Flying, and he's got vigilance, which means he doesn't tap when he attacks, so he can attack and then he can still block afterwards. What does this do? I mean, I think that must be to play the card. Let's try it. Yeah, so that plays the card. That's a nice little thing to know. Okay, don't show that again. We know. We might as well play our planes here. Right, confirm attack. Let's go all in. He can block 2 of our things. There we go, and the 2-2 and the 2-1 traded. This one, these 2 didn't trade because this guy has no strength, so he doesn't do any damage, but he has enough toughness to withstand the attack of our elite vanguard. Right, okay, well, let's keep just pushing things out there. I think this is obviously a bit of a weenie deck, which is lots of small creatures, lots of cheap small creatures, and we can be very aggressive with it. Attack with all. Let's go in for the face. So you see this guy has vigilance, which is a little shield with an eye on it. Always watching, always vigilant. Doesn't attack. Or doesn't tap to attack. So he's still able to do stuff because he's always ready. He's always vigilant. That's pretty handy. Here's our Glory Seeker. I'm coming in for glory. Not going to find any glory here, sunshine. Only a disappointing defeat at the hands of Kythian Yura and his little army of vanguards and birds. Don't know why he's got birds working for him, but or this Jaguar man, Oresca's Swiftclaw. Look at that. It's like a lion man. Cat warrior. Nice. Okay, well, don't have anything else to do, so let's just bump in. Now this might actually be enough here, because he can only block 2 things. Oh, it won't quite be enough, I don't think. No. Oh wait, no, there's another one here. Okay. Oh wait, no, this one wasn't actually attacking. This one's the one we just played. So it had summoning sickness. So this is the little swirly effect. In Hearthstone it's the little Zeds, which I actually think is a better depiction. I don't think magic has a sleep effect, so I don't think there's any necessary reason for them not to go with that. But hey, we'll remember what it means going forward. I don't know how I feel about this perspective. It looks nice. It's like, hey, we're actually sitting at a table, which is very representative of magic, but it actually makes things a little bit more awkward. You know, these cards are upside down. We have to wait for the tooltip to pop up to see what they do if they have an ability. It's a little bit wonky, and it's actually not just the ability, it's things like, so this guy's a human advisor, and that may not seem important, that might just seem like some flavour, but there's creatures which might say +1/+1 to all humans, you know, or all birds have double strike, which is another ability we might come to later. So the race or the type of a creature is quite common. Soldiers in particular, see this guy's a human soldier. Soldiers often have some nice buffs, you know. Also, this guy gives all your soldiers +1 attack, and this guy gives all your soldiers +1 toughness. And there we go, Kythian taking down the authority. F the police. What a great time. Okay, we can continue. Steamrolled. Look at that. Boom. Frenzied. Attacked every turn until you won. Because we've got no truck with authority. We're just going cracking in there. Get our deck upgraded. Oh, nice. Bit of a bigger deck. Good stuff. You fight your way out of the hideout, but you you realise continued resistance will put your friends at risk. So nobly you lay down your weapons and the guards haul you off to the dungeons. You're sentenced to 10 years for thievery. It's mostly just food, isn't it? He's just nicking some food for the slums. That seems like an awfully tough punishment especially for a youth. 10 years, crikey. Not messing around, are they? Okay. Well, here we go. Onto our next one. Still standing for justice even while incarcerated, you fight against the bullying and corruption around you. Good one, Kithian, well done. Hixus, the prison's warden, begins to admire your commitment to convictions, so he starts training Hieromancy, which is magic based on order and justice. So we start learning this. I imagine we'll start getting some sorceries and instants.
A turn in magic is broken into several phases. At the start of your turn, you'll untap all your tapped cards and draw a card. There are two main phases, one before combat and one after. Most spells can be cast only during one of your main phases. If a card in your hand is glowing, it means you can cast that spell or play that land.
Just a quick note, there's a few other little mini phases which they don't talk about. There's a sort of a startup phase, then there's untap, upkeep, draw. Now these probably won't come into play anytime soon. They're not too fancy, but the upkeep is the first thing. Sorry, untap is the first thing, which is when your creatures that are tapped, the ones that are turned sideways, they turn back round and they're ready to be used again. And then there's the upkeep, where you sometimes you have to pay costs for a creature, or little bits and bobs will happen. And then there's the draw, when you draw your card. So note that your creature untaps before you draw a card. That's not normally important, but just a little bit of nuance to remember.
When creatures attack and block. All damage.
So there we go. All damage heals at the end of turn.
After that,
this lady's a little bit quieter now, so I can just talk over her if she's not saying anything particularly interesting. Okay.
Skill quest starts in your first main phase.
A dark slick drake
stands between your elvish warrior and victory.
Okay, so dark slick drake flying. Okay, so we've talked about how there's basically lands and spells, and lands are the lands. Spells are anything else. That can be a creature, or it can be a sorcery, or an instant, or an enchantment. Now, sorceries and instant are what you might think of as spells normally. Like, you know, hey, you know, I hit you with a lightning bolt, or I buff this creature, or I counter the opponent's spell. And a nice interesting one. And an instant is a sorcery which can be played at any time. So a sorcery you have to play on your turn, but an instant you can play in your opponent's turn while they're doing something. You can play it during your attack phase. In fact, we'll show this off. Okay, so what we'll do here is we'll not use this yet. We'll continue, and you see it gives the opponent a second to respond. Okay, now so we're going to attack with this warrior, right, and we confirm it, and then we stop, and we stop the timer for a second, and then before he gets to block, so we've already declared that we're attacking, and now he's about to say, I want to block with my dark slick drake, and we say no, because I'm gonna unsummon your dark slick drake just like that, just mid attack. Because we've got an instant now, and if we had a sorcery, we could have done it. We'd have had to do it before we attacked, and in fact, it didn't really matter. In the grand scheme of things, it doesn't actually matter that you do that. You can do it whenever. There probably wouldn't have been a response anyway. So it's just a tutorial, but just to show off that you can do that. Okay, so turn 1. Looks like they're going to keep us on a nice curve still. So we play our creature. Nothing else we can do this turn. Looks like it auto ends the turn when it knows there's nothing you can do, which is a nice touch. Does keep things moving along. So this guy's presumably our trainer, the prison warden fella. Okay, so we got the 2-2s and we got the 3-1s. Now we're gonna be greedy again here and going with the 3-1. Because we don't know what this guy's going to play. No, so we haven't got a full deck yet. So a full deck in Magic is 60 cards or more. You can have more than 60. But most decks always have 60, because if you have more than 60, then it's... The way people always describe it is, you have 70 cards in your deck. Well, take out the worst 10 cards, and you have a better deck because you're going to draw the better cards more often. It can be very tempting to put more cards in, but generally speaking, it's better to just have a 60 card deck, and that's almost always what you'll see. You know, if you have a 61 card deck, what's the worst card in that deck? Just take it out. Okay, well, I think we should play our nice flying vigilant creature here. Are we just going to be aggressive again? Let's just be aggressive again. I like being aggressive. It's not true at all. I'm very defensive in Magic. In fact, like Magic, thinking back to it, coming to Hearthstone now, where people always talk about, you know, life is a resource. It's not the be all and end all. Yes, you know, you lose when you run out of life, but that doesn't mean you should protect your life at all other costs. You know, don't be afraid to pay life for certain abilities. You know, tapping as a warlock, and the same here. When I used to play Magic, I was very happy to just not block creatures, and I'd say, hey, you know, I'll have 4 health left. That's 4 times the amount I need to be alive. You know, I'll be alive on 1 health. So we got a nice thing about instants here, so we can find out about how instants work, which we kind of explained, but good to have the game tell us. Okay, so here's a good example of how instants are actually important.
On your opponent's turn,
even during combat.
After you cast an instant, it has an effect on the game, and then is put into the graveyard. For example, you could cast an instant after blockers have been chosen, but before combat damage has been dealt.
So this is where it's interesting. So
in
when
this skill quest, your opponent
so last time when I showed it off, I attacked before he had a chance to block, because as soon as he blocked a creature, that creature's blocked, and even if you deal with the blocker, it's still considered blocked and it doesn't go to face. But here, well, we've got a +3/+3, so we can make one of these guys a 7/4, which will be lethal. Okay, but he can block one of our creatures. So if we make this guy a 7/4 now, he'll just block it. So what we can do is we attack with all, and we confirm it. Okay, now he's going to block.
A timer counts.
And we stop the timer and we say, okay, you blocked this guy here on the right. So now, he can't change that. He's declared blockers. So now we say, well, okay, well, we've got an instant. We can play any time, and any time, in fact, includes right now. We're going to buff this guy up, because you're not blocking him, you're blocking this guy, and you can't change your mind. So boom, there we go. I used to do that with Giant Growth all the time. Giant Growth is a common card, so as someone that didn't have a lot of cards, you know, as a poor university student, most of my cards actually came from friends who'd played Magic for years and had a ton of spare commons that they very kindly gave, you know, some of their common and uncommon cards to us, so that we could play put some decks together. So yeah, there we go. So I used a lot of Giant Growths in my time to sneak through that little bit of final damage. Okay, so we've got one here that gives our creatures +1/+1 until end of turn. That's okay. It's not actually particularly useful for the block here, because it'll make this a 3/2, but a 3/2 and a 2/1 still trade with one another. So it's not ideal, really. But here's an interesting point. Okay, so now we have a main phase here. There's also a main phase after attacking. So it's probably best, and this is a good general rule, it's not always the case, but it's usually good to attack before you play your creatures, because you can play your creatures after the attacks have happened. But if you wanted to use this, for example, during the combat phase, you need to have the mana available, and now we didn't use that, so we can now use our mana to play a creature instead. Fantastic. There we go, and we can't use our 1 mana, so the turn ends. I don't know how, actually, it's interesting that it ends the turn when you can't use your mana, because in a multiplayer game, you know, I might be holding a 1 mana card that could be quite dangerous, but the opponent might know that I'm not because my turn ended. But that's interesting. I wonder if it does it that way in multiplayer as well. This music's still quite intense. Okay, now we still only have 3 mana. We can play another Eagle of the Watch. No more flying because that flying blocker died in the combat. So let's continue to the attack phase. We'll bash in with both. I expect he'll actually block both. Probably. Nope, just going to block one. Interesting. Take the 2 damage on this guy. And then we'll play our Eagle of the Watch. There we go. There's something to be said for not attacking. Even more so in Magic than in Hearthstone. As it is a more defensive game. Hearthstone's quite aggressive because the player with the player whose turn it is has all the control. They choose which creatures attack. They choose how creatures attack, where they go, whether they hit other creatures or they hit face. They can play spells. The opponent can't do anything but sit there and watch. So it's quite an aggressive game, whereas as this is a much more defensive game. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to bash in with our 2 creatures here. Go to the attack phase. We're going to attack with all. Confirm. Now, he's going to declare his blockers, and we could buff this up and get 1 more damage through. Probably not worth it. So we'll just wait. We'll play our 2 Glory Seekers instead. Boom. So you see when we play this, this is still available. Well, it's not now, but when we played the first one, this was still highlighted, but the other card wasn't, because we could play it in response to playing this. And in response is a term you'll hear a lot. You'll play a spell or a creature, and the opponent will do something in response. So they'll play something. So this guy, it seems that, I guess he's probably got a lot of. This is one of those things you can be. We're kind of slightly mana starved, which means we're not drawing land that we can play. You can only play 1 land a turn, but we haven't drawn any, so we can't play any this turn. This guy seems to be mana flooded, which is the opposite. He's drawing lots of lands and not anything to play with his lands, which is unfortunate for them, really. But we could play our Great Heart here. We've got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now we could get 9 damage if he doesn't block. I actually might use the +1/+1. Oh, he's got the lightning strike. Okay, so he's going to deal 3 damage to one of our creatures. Now we can't protect it with the glorious charge, and we'd only get +2 damage instead now. Okay, so let's stop the timer. So he's going to kill this. We buff up our creatures, this becomes a 3/2, but it still dies to this 3 damage. And these guys will do 2 more damage, knock him down to 4. That's okay. But I think I'd rather play the Great Heart. So we'll let him get away with that. It's a clever trick. There we go. And then we play our Great Heart. Again, order doesn't make a difference here. There's no cards that benefit from being played in a certain spot on the board. It's just a case of how you like to organise things. So often I like to keep creatures that are the same next to each other. Okay, so he's playing a Travelling Philosopher. That's nice, but it's not going to help. Okay, now, hopefully. In fact, look at this. We got 2 Glorious Charges. That's nice. It's a bit overkill, but it's nice. But it might not be overkill, because if he blocks one of these, even 1 Glorious Charge would protect the creature. Right, so let's attack. Confirm attack. And he declares his blocker. And then we go Glorious Charge. Glorious Charge. Now what I've done here going to pause the timer. I've created a stack. I did this second one in response to the first one. Just a bit of nuance. You don't need to remember this if you're new to Magic, but it's important, which is spells resolve in reverse order to how they were played. So I played this, and I imagine I put it on the table. I played another one in response. That goes on top, and then that one, you see, that one will be used first. Boom, and then the second one is now on the bottom, on the one I put on the table first, and we win. So just a little nuance to remember over this loud banging tune is yes, spells result, and the reason that's important is if I play a spell and you play a counter spell that stops that spell, the counter spell activates first and stops the original spell. And if I then play a second counter spell to counter your first one, my second counter spell cancels yours, then yours would happen but it no longer exists, it was countered, and then my original spell can resolve normally. That's maybe too complicated to worry about for now, but just remember it for later, maybe. Just something to think about. So 4 years under the guidance of Hixus in prison has shaped us into a powerful combat mage with a pretty fancy do. Look at this. Nice long hair. Hixus believes your natural talent for wielding magic belies something special about you. He suspects that, like his own mentor, probably this chap here, you may be a planeswalker, so you may have the potential under specific conditions when, you know, things are tough. Maybe this spark will light up and you'll be able to cross the plains. And I guess we'll find out next time. That's going to wrap things up for now. Thanks very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this. I'm really liking getting into here. These cards are all fairly basic, but I'm sure as we progress we'll get into more interesting things. I want to play a bunch of this game. I really like Magic the Gathering. I don't have a good group of people to play with near me. There's nowhere that runs Magic tournaments in my town, which is weird, kind of, because there's almost one in every town. But there's not one here, which is weird because I say town, but it's actually a city. It's quite a large place. But I want to try playing this. I want to see how they've handled it. It feels quite nice. It flows quite well. I still think Hearthstone, as a game designed for PC, is better on PC, but Magic's a fantastic game, and I think this is a great way for people to try it for free, which is good. So thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed the video, be sure to bop that like button, drop me a comment, tell me about your history of Magic, tell me what you think of this game, what you'd like to see them implement in this game, what you'd like to see from me covering this game, anything you'd like me to explain about mechanics of Magic. I'm fairly competent. I don't know everything, obviously. I'm not a rules judge, but I have a good grasp of the mechanics of Magic the Gathering. Thanks very much for watching. Be sure to subscribe for more Magic Duels content, because it will be coming. And of course, all my other stuff on the channel as usual. I've been Ken, and I will catch you next time. Cheers!